at any rate, leads us back to the big gray table, where we are joined by Fred ATKINS, three-time Sarasota mayor, mainstay of the city commission around here, serving for 18 years, and Rod Thompson, media critic, journalist, and president of the Sarasota Republican Club. We've kind of let things calm down, guys. If we were on last Monday, we would be a little bit more raw, but we did all of our back-to-school coverage last week, getting everybody ready for today. It still stings, though, after looking at a week's worth of coverage on this. Fred, it's more of the same. We're seeing the sides kind of lining up across the streets, aren't we?
Yes. We've come to the point where, as Dr. King said, the time is now to do the right thing. And the right thing is to basically address some of the issues that even the president and his leader of the Senate has decided that they are going to supposedly address those issues when we come back in session. Those are the struggles that we have to make sure that the public press them to make some serious decisions about how we are going to address these great concerns.
Serious discussions, serious decisions, not just the back and forth, and again, the predictable rhetoric that we too often see. Rod, do you think we're going to get beyond that this time?
Well, it depends, because what I wasn't sure of if Fred is talking about the same things that I would want to be talking about. If we're just talking about gun legislation, I think we're really actually treating a symptom and not treating the core problem that we have. You get to the problem of guns, and I'm open to certain discussions there, but I think our core problem is actually a mental health issue. All of these people who commit these have mental health issues. They were either previously diagnosed or they were post-diagnosed, or you can just go by the simple fact that if you arm up and go slaughter a whole bunch of people with the expectation that you're going to die, you're a sick person mentally, as well as spiritually and emotionally. So I think that we have, and I want to get into it more a little bit later, but I think we have a substantial mental health problem that really started when we changed how we handle the most severe mental cases that we have.
This goes back to the Reagan administration and before that even trying to mainstream folks.
Correct. That was in the 60s it started.
Yeah, I mean, you've opened Pandora's box here. Can you close that?
Well, it would take what Fred's talking about. It would take serious leadership. You'd have to take serious leadership that would have to say, look, there are a tiny little percentage of people in the world that are mentally unstable or are psychopathic or otherwise that really cannot be allowed to be out in society on their own. They're a danger to themselves and to others. A chunk of them end up as homeless, and a few of them end up with high-powered weaponry.
But you want to jump in here? Go ahead.
Yes, but is white supremacy a mental illness now? Have it been diagnosed yet? Because the problem is greater than just mental illness. It's allowing people to have guns of mass destruction. That is our problem. And people that not necessarily mentally ill have them, and they can use them at any time, with large magazines that are not capable of doing anything but killing a lot of people. You can't shoot one bird with those big old bullets. You'll explode it.
And unfortunately, again, all of that is already out there. So do we pull back 300 million firearms from the streets?
Yes.
We do?
Yes.
You think that's possible?
Not possible, but it's a goal to have in expectation of, because there are too many guns that are too big. When they created these AK-47s and M1s and M2s and M16s, it was about killing a lot of people quickly. Now we got people
military style, military grade weapons.
That's where they come from. Now we got them on the streets of Newtown, Manatee County, Tallahassee, California, and all over the country.
They're all over the place.
Yes. So now it's time for us to address that issue. And the issue has gotten away, and it's gotten away because the Republican Party has allowed it to happen because they were too busy following the NRA and their supervision and money.
We went straight to race and to partisanship just like that. So now
there's
a lot to be. Well, if you want it to be, it can be. But what I'm saying is, if you're talking about those high-capacity magazines and those weapons, we had Tommy guns and machine guns in the 20s and 30s and 40s.
You're absolutely correct.
And we didn't have mass shootings when we had it, and we had more guns per people then than we do now, and we didn't have mass shootings. Something has changed, and it's not the guns.
The president.
The president hasn't caused it. Come on.
I'm going to put a pin in it right there. This is just getting started. We're getting warmed up in our conversation. You better stick right here because we're going to have more of this coming up after the break.
You're watching ABC 7 News at 7:30.
Yes, check your watch right now. We're late. We're late coming back because we're already getting a good discussion started. We're talking about guns and politics and how they're connected. And as mentioned before, we're just over a week from those two separate mass shootings, one in El Paso, one in Dayton, 31 people dead. So where do we go from here? We've got a couple of experts to give us their ideas. Fred Atkins, three-time Sarasota mayor, mainstay of our local city commission. For 18 years, Rod Thompson, president of the Sarasota Republican Club. You guys come at this from different directions. But during the break right here, we almost had a kumbaya moment. We were almost, we're really in favor of the same things here. Rod, you mentioned it. Fred, you mentioned it. Rewarding families for doing the right thing and sticking together. Is that something we can do?
I think that's one of our greatest issues in the United States right now. Is basically the implosion of the family. You know, fathers are not in homes anywhere around this community. And that's one of our greatest goals and tasks of the future, is how to figure out how do we maintain the family and keep them together.
Pretty damning statement on us men, isn't it? We've done a pretty lousy job, haven't we?
Yes, we've used the easy out.
The easy out.
Absolutely right. I mean, what we've done is we've encouraged, we set up through, we don't even need to go into all the reasons, but there's a lot of cultural parts of the stew that go into this that reward men for being irresponsible, and in a sense almost reward women for being irresponsible. But we need to have men as fathers, and we don't have that in our culture. We don't hold that up. That's not a thing to be envied and a thing to be rewarded and honored. We don't have that.
Yes,
celebrated.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got tests to get your license for a car, but there's no licensure or test to become a father. And
nor would I want there to be. But when you look at a lot of these mass killers, one of the most common things, we talked about some before, but one of the most common things is that they didn't have a father in the home. And when you see crime, and this is across racial and income levels, crime among young men is multiple times higher if they did not grow up with a father in the home compared to those who grew up in a stable two-parent home. And there's a lot of people that don't like hearing that because, you know, we've made a big thing out of single moms. Well, single moms that are doing it, I mean, they're doing yeoman's work. I can't imagine it, right? We raised
doing
8
the
children.
Job of 2 people, yeah.
We raised 8 children, with my wife and I, and it's, wow, I can't imagine
God
one
bless
person
you. 8
trying to do
kids,
that.
wow.
Right? But we need to be able to, like Fred says, celebrate husbands and wives, mothers and fathers together doing the thing, this nucleus core that is a part of a civilized society, and we've let it fall apart in our country. And I think that the mass shootings is only one part of that. The crime is another part, the education, the drug epidemic, is definitely all sort of stems from that.
And let me just go out on a limb here, and I think it might be a strong limb. It's accountability. It all comes back to accountability, doesn't it?
Yes.
We're not holding our citizens, ourselves, to be accountable.
Yeah, and it's us. It's about us. We have to respect the process of raising children. Children need to be raised. All right, today I substitute taught at a high school. The first thing was on the substitute instruction list was to lock all the doors. The next thing was to look at the yellow folder to find out what is the lockdown rules for the school. Now those are the first 2 things you see when you sit down as a substitute teacher. That's seriously out of order. Mm-hmm. You know, I can't even.
You're already rocked back on your heels in a defensive posture.
I said, oh, so now I got to answer the door.
Where's the teaching come in?
First, you got to train the kids to not open the door, only the teachers open the door. Then you got to make sure that you tell them, say, if there's a shooter on campus, you go into the corner in the back in the dark, out of the angle from the door, so that you will be out of sight. And so that's what the first thing those kids heard in first period from me was how to stay safe. That's a shame when they got 100 other problems they come there with, lack of income, lack of family structure.
Sure.
All of these
Everybody
needs,
carries around a big bag of whatever that they got to deal with.
That's our struggle, and we have to address this holistically, because if we just go at the gunman or at the gun, we're going to miss the whole big point.
And I think Rod said it, we're going after the symptom, not the cause.
But our struggle is that when you got such a damaging system that allows a system to just, be a cancer in a community where if you go to Times Square and a motorcycle backfire, everybody scatters and stampede, we look like a third world country at a soccer match.
All right, so I think part of the problem here, though, is that is an image problem. This is going to, I'll get in dangerous territory because it'll sound like I'm diminishing a mass shooting, which is most certainly not the case. But the children in the school there are at a far higher risk of crime, doesn't matter what school it is, at a far higher risk of being hurt or killed by a crime in their neighborhood than by a mass shooter coming in. The odds of a mass shooter coming in are astronomically small, actually, for another Parkland type thing.
The statistics
statistically ridiculously small.
Yeah.
And they're even a far greater risk, particularly if they're young people, teenagers, driving a car, a way, way greater risk. So, there are certain trade-offs that we have to have, but I think that we have an image here where obviously it's huge news. It must be, and it is huge news when somebody goes in and mows down a bunch of people in a Walmart. That's an absurd thing that is huge news. And we don't like to hear it, but you pick any major city, and as many or more people were killed over the course of a couple weeks in that major city, any given couple weeks, than in that shooting. And we don't have that discussion, and that goes back to what Fred was saying too about a holistic approach. And if we don't have the holistic approach to it, then we're trying to go after a mass shooter here or there, we're really missing all the damage that's being done elsewhere.
Okay, you think that's the case?
Rod have a way of elongating a simple explanation. The struggle is...
We got to fill the time here, man.
We need to fill it with substance. The struggle is that we have allowed this country to basically disintegrate in our presence. I'm telling you, I grew up in the 60s. I understood what fear was in the 60s. Let me tell you something. I am just afraid now in 2019 as I was in 1959.
Of the same stuff?
Of the same stuff.
Of the same stuff.
Of the same stuff.
And do you think that that's the root then? That if we're all still afraid, because people operate out of love or out of fear, and if we're all still afraid, then we're all going to be, rocked back in that defensive posture.
Yeah, in 59 we were talking about the Russians was going to drop the bomb on us. Now we're talking about our own citizens mowing us down. Like that's a simple way of saying killing me.
It's tough. I mean, but we have gotten to this point over 50 years.
Yes.
And so is it going to take 50 years to get out of it, or is there a way out of it?
There's a way.
Okay.
There's a way. And the way is to first recognize all of the systemic problems and be willing to participate in them. You mentioned earlier that under President Reagan, they let all the mental health patients out of the hospitals. I mean, they closed them down, right? In the next county.
It was in the 60s, but then finally through the mainstreaming was in
Reagan dumped them all out. All right, he shut them down.
Well, it was certainly a congressional mandate that this happened, and that was all part of the let's.
And that was the
let's
Democrat
be more
Congress. That was a liberal ideal to allow these people freedom and to not have them incarcerated against their will.
Mainstreaming was the term.
It was the term, and they were supposed to be going to these community health centers, which were never funded or set up, and they ended up out on the streets.
And that's exactly what happened. And they came to not only Sarasota, but they came to Manatee County, they came to Tampa, they came to Philadelphia. So now here we are with that problem. But we also got a problem of the family. We need to deal with that problem also. We also got a problem of neonatal care. We need to address the concerns of babies before they get here.
But all of this is requiring leadership. And unless we've got leadership that's going to take this on instead of just calling each other names, nothing's going to happen.
We don't have that in any party right now. At the federal level, we don't have any kind of leadership. When we're talking about here the actual a core, even systemic sort of thing, where we're talking about how do we lead this country back towards a more nuclear family, a focus on family, church, and community even. And some people really don't like that middle word, I'm sorry, but a focus on those sorts of institutions that have been a part of us in successful civilizations forever. If we don't have a leader that leads us in that direction, and we don't, I don't know how we get back there. It seems like Fred and I actually have some common ground here.
This is amazing, yeah, I'm seeing that, and I'm going to ask you both to hold on to that common ground here because we've got to take another break. Our final thoughts when we come back. Hey everybody, it is 7:45 right now on the big broadcast, and our guests are joining us for some final thoughts. I want to give each of you guys about a minute here. We talked about the need for leadership, decisive action, and really, some leadership to get this done. So, Fred, dazzle me. What would you do if you had the power to pull this together?
Yeah. I sit here constantly in the presence of young people. Matter of fact, it is so vitally important to the essence of who I am that I hear from them. And they constantly talk about how do we get from here to there. And I tell them, first off, you got to start concentrating and believing in yourself. But we got to do more than that. We got to go back to creating family structure that defines a future that's positive for young people, not only girls but boys also. And we got to make sure that families are getting paid equitably so that they can share in the wealth of this country, because as long as they are disgruntled and dissatisfied with the process, it's going to be hard to get them together to make some positive decisions, not only about themselves but about the rest of the community. So I encourage them to come on.
And an incentive to keep that family together would certainly be a good start. Rod, he left you with a full minute.
So one of the things I love that he said there is not only girls but boys too. So this has been something, I have 6 boys and 2 girls, and this has been something that I've paid really close attention to. And that is, for a lot of years we have, you can make a good case for it, had all these organizations and efforts to make sure that girls thrive here and girls do this. And we have a ton of support network. The problem is that our boys are being left behind. A lot of young men in this country are being left behind. And I don't just mean in like rural Pennsylvania and Appalachia or something. I mean all over the place. If you look at the entrance and exit out of college now, there's almost a 20 percentage point difference now. Girls are that much more in college than boys are. And it expands from there. And we need boys to be we need them to be young men who are critical elements of our society, and then circle back around to what we're saying, that they are then the father figures in their homes. They are father figures for their boys. Their boys see how they treat their mom. This was something incredibly important to us. My boys could see how I treated my wife, and that was how they were to treat all women.
There you go. Accountability. And it ain't the gun. It's all of us.
Right.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I tell you, I did not expect the conversation to go this way, but I'm really glad that it did. Appreciate your time. I want to thank Fred Atkins and Rod Thompson for